Welcome to the archiving video as part of the Exchange Technical Video Series. I'm Anvu, and I'm here with Ankur Kothari, my teammate. So Ankur, what are we going to be talking about today?
Well, I'd love to talk to you today about some of the archiving features that are there in Exchange Server 2010. We're going to look at what some of the benefits for organizations are when it comes to preserving and capturing that data, as well as producing that when you need to look at a discovery request for an organization. Next, after that, we're going to actually go through 4 separate scenarios. We're going to look at how do we actually provision the archive? What's the experience going to look like when you're creating the archive for an end user? We're going to look in 2 scenarios. We're going to look at if you want to have the archive on premises or if you want to have the archive in the cloud, having those as excellent ways or easy ways that we can get that accomplished. Secondarily, we want to definitely talk about some of the compliance functionality around retention policies. We know that customers have the ability to preserve data for a set amount of time, and showing how easy it is to create and manage that infrastructure for an organization is the next thing we want to talk about. The third thing is we want to show kind of a scenario around what we call the smoking gun. And this is a way that we can prove in the court of law or in another scenario where we need to produce data that we will have all of that data no matter what a user tries to do or tries to hide around that. And the fourth scenario we want to talk about is the rolling legal hold. And this is a scenario where if an organization wants to keep all data in an organization just for a 7-year period or a 3-year period, we know that we have the ability to keep that amount of data no matter what as time moves on. So four very powerful archiving and compliance scenarios that we hope to show you through these demo processes. With that, then we're going to just do a quick summary, walk through what we've learned today, and finally we've captured a few tidbits, web collateral, and things that you might find interesting in that information.
That sounds great. So I know that customers archive for lots of different reasons. They might do it for storage purposes, they might do it for legal or compliance purposes. So what does archiving mean to us in the context of Exchange?
It's a great question. When we talk about archiving, we really think about it in 2 very distinct buckets, if you will. The first is on preserving that data. We know that lots of organizations have a data management issue and they need to preserve and contain that information so that they're not worrying about an unwieldy amount of email across their infrastructure, right? Mm-hmm. And the second is around the discovery of data. So once you've actually created and have this good repository of data, how do you actually find the information you're looking for in a reasonable amount of time and produce that when you need to go to litigation or need to respond to a discovery request? Mm-hmm. Within those, there's a lot of different functionality for that. So when we talk about preservation of data, you're really looking at 3 very, very powerful functionality or feature set that we've carved into that. The first is around the personal archive. And this is the ability for an end user to actually have an archive that is visible, usable, and something that they can interact with on a day-to-day basis. The ability to do things like drag and drop or set policies so that items will automatically flow into that archive.
Okay.
The archive also has the ability to be kept on premises with your mailbox, or if you want, you can use our cloud-based storage for an unlimited sized archive. So you don't have to worry about that archive storage on premises, solving some of those pain points around managing that massive, massive amount of data.
So the personal archive is really helpful, but what about companies that have to be able to set policies around retention and expiration? So can you describe that a little bit more?
Sure. We have some really powerful functionality in Exchange 2010 around move and delete policies. And these are policies that can do things like automatically move items from your mailbox to your archive, and so you're not worrying about your quota, or automatically delete items after a certain amount of time, and so you're always keeping your inbox clean and fresh, and you're not spending that 3 or 4 or 5 hours a week managing your 250 meg quota, and you can just worry about doing your job. A third item that's in our preservation bucket, if you will, starts to talk a little bit more about some of the great compliance features that we have in Exchange 2010. This is what we call our hold policy features. And these are things that we can place a user on legal hold, and you know that once I place a user on legal hold, that all all changes, all items, everything is captured for that individual's mailbox, and it's kept there so that no matter what, you're sure that you're able to produce that information if you need to.
So the personal archive is really beneficial to end users. But what about organizations that want to set some policies for legal or regulatory purposes? What do we do for companies that want to hold or expire emails?
That's a great question. We know that there's a lot of companies requesting the ability to set policies so that they can automatically expire out content after a certain amount of time. So that they can set a policy to say that after 30 days, let's move all this information to my archive, and after 60 days, or 6 years, let's delete this information from my environment. So I'm not having to produce that. It's not in my bucket of information that I need to produce if someone asks for it. Mm-hmm. The other thing is when it comes to what are some of the features that we can offer around compliance, around legal hold. So we have this legal hold functionality which allows an organization to say, I'd like to put someone on legal hold, and for that period of time, I need to be guaranteed that no matter what, all of that information is tracked, is changed, and if I need to produce it, I know from that point in time, that all that information is captured and guaranteed to be there.
Okay.
So that contains kind of our preservation bucket, and if you think about the discovery bucket, this is what do you do after you've actually contained all that information? We have some really great e-discovery or multi-mailbox features that allow an organization to specify an individual or a group of individuals that may not be IT people, the ability to search mailboxes, produce that data, do all sorts of analytics around that so they can produce that and give that to an organization, a litigator, or someone else if they need to. And all that is some of the really, really rich benefits around Exchange 2010's archiving functionality.
That's really great that we put archiving natively within Exchange. So how do we actually use it? How do you provision it?
That's a great question. Let's actually dive a little bit into some of these scenarios that we were talking about and show what the provisioning experience is around creating an archive for a user.
Okay.
So I have my organization set up here, and you can see that I've opened Exchange Management Console up with my organization configuration on the left. I have this connected to my online environment as well, so Office 365.
Okay.
I have a number of mailboxes in the center panel here, and you can see that some of them have an archive created both on premises as well as in the cloud. And what I want to show is how easy it is to create an archive for a user. So I'm going to click on Todd Meadows and just right-click, and you can see that just from right-clicking, I have the ability to select Enable Archive. I can choose to create it in a local database that the mailbox is in, or if I want to use some sort of tiered archiving solution where I have my mailbox kept on one class of storage and my archive kept on another class of storage, I can do something like that. And I can choose which one I want, or if I wanted to, I can create it in a remote location on Office 365.
Okay.
Let's go through both options. So first, I'm going to create the local archive. It's as simple as selecting OK, and you can see that the local archive is created. And I'm going to show that logged in. The other thing I want to show is what does it look like when we want to create an archive in the cloud? Now, there's a little bit of prerequisites around it, and we have some really great articles on how to actually get this set up. So if you log into your Office 365 portal, which is portal.microsoftonline.com,
Yep.
it'll give you a few steps on setting up the environment so that you can actually connect your on-premises environment to the cloud. You get some really, really great benefits, and one of them is the ability to create what we call an Exchange Online archive.
Okay.
If you look down, there's a few steps that we do. One is you set up single sign-on, and this is also called identity federation, and that's a pretty simple step. You install the role on a machine in your environment. And the second step is to set up Active Directory synchronization. And let's actually show what that looks like. Once you set up the single sign-on experience, I want to just switch to another machine and show what it looks like to set up the directory synchronization.
Okay.
And so I've logged in here, and I've opened up the Online Services Directory Synchronization Configuration Wizard. And I'm just going to hit Next, and it'll ask you for two sets of credentials. The first one is, what is your administrative cloud account? And so I'm going to just type in mine. and hit next. And then the second step, it'll ask me for credentials for an account with enterprise admin permissions on my own infrastructure, my own forest on premises.
Okay.
And so I'm going to type in my administrator password here, or username and password. And just those 2 usernames and passwords, and it'll configure all of that smartness inside, configuration complete. And if I wanted to, I can set to synchronize the directories now. And this will basically allow you the ability to do a lot of different hybrid scenarios. One of them is the ability to provision the archive.
Okay.
And so I'm going to hit finish here. So now I've switched back to the Exchange Management Console on my other server, and I'm going to actually create an archive for Shane Kim here.
Okay.
So I'm going to right-click on Shane in the same way, enable archive, create a remote hosted archive, and I'm going to choose this domain that I have set up. Select OK, and it'll say pending. In just a few minutes, it'll actually create the cloud-based archive, as you see for Jill Schrader up above. And so now we've switched back over to Shane Kim's desktop, and I've logged in as Shane Kim into Outlook, and you can see that right away he has his inbox showing up with the normal items that he's used to, but right underneath there is the archive that's been created for him and provisioned. So he can start dragging and dropping items into there, or even creating folders. If he logs into Outlook web app, you have the exact same experience. So you have the inbox hierarchy as well as the archive that is created. So pretty simple way on provisioning an archive for a user either on premises or have that archive in the cloud.
And it's a unified management experience. You can do it all through EMC. That's really easy.
Absolutely.
Earlier, we had discussed the need for companies to create retention policies due to legal, regulatory, or just internal corporate governance reasons. So how do we actually do that and implement that within Exchange?
When you start talking about what customers want and what they've been asking for, is they really want a way that they can manage the retention of their information so that they can expire items out or move items to the archive as they want. So let's show how that looks like in the Exchange Management Console. So within the Exchange Management Console, I'm clicked under Organization Configuration and then under Mailbox. And on Mailbox, you see a number of different tabs, and we're going to actually be talking about 2 at first. The first is the retention policy tags. And these you can think of as options that an individual or a user can use to tag an individual item. So they can say, I'd like to keep this item for a longer period of time or a shorter period of time, depending on, whatever the business requirements have been set for an organization.
Yeah.
So let's create one. On the actions, or I can right-click, I'm going to choose New Retention Policy Tag. And on the tag name, I'm going to specify it's a 2-year retention for legal requirements. The tag type, you can specify a number of different folders in your inbox, but I'm just going to choose personal folder. And since it's a 2-year retention, in days, that's 730 days. And you have a few actions if you want to manage to that. The first one is to delete and allow recovery, and this will move an item from your inbox into your deleted items, but allow you to recover that. And this is a special part of your mailbox that is recoverable.
Your dumpster.
Your dumpster or your recoverable item store. The second is your permanently delete option, which is actually going to remove it, bypass that all directly and just purge it from your environment.
Okay.
And then the third is to move it to the archive. So you can do a combination of these policies if you want, but for our perspective, let's just do a simple permanently delete policy. And you can specify a comment, if you will, and just specify new. It'll run the PowerShell commandlet and create that tag. And you can see it's set up right here. So you've created that option, the tag, but you haven't actually published it to anyone via a retention policy. So let's go through that step. If I click on retention policies, I have 3 retention policies set up, 2 by default, and the third one is created as a sales policy. So let's look at that sales policy. There's a number of different tags that are in here, as well as different types and the actions that are associated with them. Let's add the tag that we just created, which is the
2-year retention.
There it is, 2-year retention for legal requirements. This will now apply to all of the mailboxes that have been shown on the mailbox tab. So if we click on the mailbox tab, you can see that there's 4 mailboxes that have been assigned this policy. If I hit OK, the next time the Manage Folder Assistant runs, it's going to assign the new tag that I've created to those mailboxes. But for the purposes of this demo, let's just do a quick get mailbox and just run it on all of my organization. And this will kickstart the Manage Folder Assistant. Okay, and it's finished. So let's log in as Shane and see if it's shown up here. So if I click on an item here, if I right-click it, I can choose to assign policy, and sure enough, you see a 2-year retention for legal requirements. So if I wanted to, I could specify that 2-year requirement.
That's the one we just did.
That's just the one we just did. Or I can choose from the ribbon here and assign that same policy for Shane Kim.
So for Shane Kim, if he applies that to a message, it means that it's going to be deleted after 2 years, permanently delete, because that's what we chose, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I see we're on scenario 3, the smoking gun. So let me give you a little case study or scenario. Let's say there's somebody at a company and they are doing something that is inappropriate, unlawful, or against company policies. And so HR legal starts to conduct some investigations. So the person doing the wrongdoing starts to sort of mask their trails through emails. They start to tamper with their emails, perhaps delete emails. So how does an HR or legal team take action to make sure that those emails are preserved in case that end user tampers with them, as well as search those emails to be able to take enough evidence to build a case against that individual, and then produce those emails or documents to opposing legal counsel or their own sort of investigative arm? How does
Sure.
somebody do that with an exchange?
Yeah, no, that's a very great question, and something that if you are a compliance officer or this is a part of your job, you're very familiar with. You know that you need to be able to produce and make sure that you can set legal holds on individuals and on their mailboxes so that you can produce that in the court of law. So let's show what it looks like in the demo environment here. Again, I have the Exchange Management Console open.
Okay.
And let's pick on Shane Kim. We know that he's been doing some questionable things in the past, and the investigation may be centered around him. So what we want to do is we're going to place him on legal hold. And Shane Kim's properties just pop up here by double-clicking on his mailbox.
Okay.
And I can click on mailbox settings and see some of the features that are available for this mailbox. If I click on Messaging Records Management, or MRM, you'll notice that there is a checkbox here for Enable Litigation Hold. It's also known as legal hold in many industries. I just select that, and if I want to notify that user with more information or internal website that he can learn about why he's been placed on hold, I can enter a URL here. Or I can specify comments that, hey, you're under investigation, you may want to limit exposure or something like that. If you want to do it anonymously, and in this scenario, let's say that we want to do it anonymously, you don't have to specify anything in here, and the user is not notified that he's on legal hold.
Okay.
And so we just specify OK. And you're told right away that the hold setting may take up to 60 minutes. And so we'll wait for the 60 minutes to pass, and we can see that that legal hold has been enabled for Shane Kim.
Okay.
Now Shane, as we mentioned, has been placed on legal hold anonymously, so he's not been notified of this. And he realizes through word of mouth or that, hey, he's under investigation, and it starts to think about what has he been doing that's been a little bit questionable in the past. And he knows that just earlier today, he sent an item to his friend Todd about some predictions on what's going to be happening in the acquisitions of a few companies.
Okay.
And he had that in a Word document here. And he sees that, internal sources say that that there's a high chance of acquisition of this Northwood Traders company, so it's a good time to buy some stock. So he doesn't want to let people know that he's done this, so he's actually just going to delete this sentence and say historical information. So he's not giving any predictive information. He's not implicating himself in any ways, he's just going to save this back into the email message, close the message. He wants to save that back in, and he thinks he's covered his tracks. In his email, it looks like everything is saved. He's not done anything wrong, and that he's in the clear.
Okay.
But since, if you remember, we placed him on legal hold. So let's see what that looks like from a compliance officer perspective. I'm going to be logging in as Arlene Huff, who has been delegated rights as a compliance officer for this Contoso organization. Because she's been given the ability to manage more than just herself and some of the compliance functionality, if she clicks on My Organization when she chooses what to manage, she gets some of that mail control ability. And so you can see under the Discovery tab, she's been granted only this ability and not some of the other mail control functionality.
Okay.
So let's run a quick e-discovery search on Shane Kim and see if we can find that smoking gun that we're looking for.
Okay.
The new mailbox search window pops up, and you can search for keywords or things that may be interesting for the case. And we know that this is involving Woodgrove Bank, so let's just type in Woodgrove. You have a number of different choices on what you want to search. You can just search emails, or you can search contacts, tasks, notes, instant messaging, conversation. For the purposes of this search, let's just search email. We can search a number of different emails, but we don't know who Shane may have been sending to, but we know that it's coming from Shane. So let's select Shane as the sender, and we can narrow it down a little bit there. Date range, if you want to narrow down the date range for our purposes, let's keep an open-ended search and search everything. And let's just search Shane's mailbox for now.
But you can search all mailboxes or a group of mailboxes.
Absolutely. And based on the delegation, you could actually say that Arlene Huff is only able to search a subset of the mailboxes. Okay. So if she's in a remote office, she perhaps only has ability to search that remote office's mailboxes. Finally, you just specify a search name, and let's just type in Woodgrove. And you can estimate the search or copy the search directly to a destination. Let's just directly copy it to the destination and enable deduplication, so you're not exporting multiple copies of the same item. Choose which mailbox to input the search results and hit save. And just like that was pretty simple. Mm-hmm. The search is run and it's kicked off, and you're able to see some statistics as it starts moving forward. If I hit refresh, I can see that the search has succeeded for the search name. And I can just click to select the open button and see what that looks like for the compliance officer. And the first thing you'll notice is that you don't get some abstract user interface. They're presented with the same Outlook web app experience that they're used to using for their personal email.
So Arlene doesn't have to log into anything else to do this. She can just log into Outlook web app like
Absolutely.
She always does. Okay.
And I can see the Woodgrove search that I just placed and the results under there. And you can see that the results actually just find that one item that we were looking for, which is from Shane Kim. And you'll say, check out my predictions in the Word document.
And if there were a lot of other emails, we would see those too.
Absolutely. And you can see that there is the original email that pops up that actually has the word Woodgrove in there. And so you're able to find that item, which is the smoking gun in this case, so that they can prove that Shane has been doing some illegal activities by doing some insider trading. So very, very cool way, very, very powerful way of showing that no matter what, you are tracking an item, no matter if they try and do some hiding sort of activities on their historical email.
That's great. So now we're moving along to scenario 4. What you showed me in scenario 3 was really great for a lot of companies, but some types of organizations like financial organizations or pharmaceutical organizations may have legal or regulatory requirements that say they have to actually retain information for a certain time period, let's say 7 years or 3 years, and not only that things need to be deleted at the end, but also they need to be, not changed within that time frame. So how do we enable that with an exchange?
That's a great question. So we have the ability to do what we call a rolling legal hold. So being able to show that no matter what has been in that mailbox, it's been there for at minimum a certain amount of time. So you brought up an example of 3 years or 7 years, which is a common number. Another common number is 10 years. So let's set it up for Shane Kim's mailbox.
Okay.
And you can set this up on a mailbox level or a database level. And so you have a lot of control on, for Shane's mailbox, you could set up for 10 years, and for another mailbox, you can set up for another 7 years. But if all of your organization is under the same policy, you can set up your entire mailbox structure, your mailbox databases to manage it for a 7-year rolling hold period.
Okay.
And so for Shane, what you do is just a set mailbox command on Shane Kim. You set single item recovery enabled to be true. And you specify the period of time that you want to retain the deleted items for. And let's do 10 years. So just put it in days, so 33,650 days. Hit enter. It takes about 60 minutes for the Manage Folder Assistant to run and kick off on some of these processes. And from a discovery experience, now you're guaranteed that from this point in time, all items in his inbox will be preserved for that 10-year period.
From now until 10 years out.
From now until 10 years out. And in 7 years, you know that the 7 years prior have been kept, but in 11 years, from now until a year out, may not be there in the environment. So you're reducing your exposure when you're producing data by only having that retained amount of data be capped at your whatever you want to specify for the rolling legal hold. So let's talk a little bit about what we've learned today. There's really three big features, or three big points that keep permeating through all of these demos and scenarios that you've seen.
Okay.
The first is on the user experience. When an end user logs into Outlook web app or the Outlook experience, they're not having to relearn or get retrained on that experience, which is very similar to the second point around the administrative experience. Users are used to using the Exchange Management Console to manage their users and database and mailboxes, and the archive is just another component of that, and so they're not having to worry about another experience. And the third is, by having an integrated experience, you're not shelling out a lot of money for additional archiving capabilities and licenses and technology. It's all contained within the Exchange environment, and so you're saving a lot of money around the archiving solution, so you're really reducing your TCO. And finally, the point that's probably the most important to IT administrators, IT decision makers, is by having that integrated solution directly into Exchange, they're going to save a lot of money from a TCO or cost perspective around Exchange or within archiving. By leveraging the technology that's brought directly in there, they're not having to worry about additional licenses or procurement or hardware to store that data. It's kept in there, and you're still having a great experience while still saving a ton of money from an archiving component perspective. And let's actually just talk a little bit about what are some of the additional resources.
Okay.
We have 5 great resources that keep popping up as frequently asked questions, or what do I talk about? The first is we have the Microsoft.com page on email archiving. And so if you're looking for white papers or demonstrations or videos, it's a great place to look at. The second is we have the value of email archiving white paper. So if you're looking at how can we showcase what email archiving can do for my organization, I'd recommend looking at that second one. If you're looking for a little more technical depth, we have a great TechNet starting point, which is the third one under Understanding Archiving. The fourth one is if you're looking to learn a little bit more about how to complete your provisioning with Office 365. And this is the first demo I've shown where you can have your archive being kept in the cloud. Please look at that link. And the fifth one is we just have ongoing, we have a number of different resources that keep showing up around msexchangeteam.com. And I don't want to single one out, but it's a good thing to have on your RSS feed or just your links to keep reviewing.
Thanks, Ankur. And thanks to all of you for watching the Exchange archiving video as part of our Exchange technical video series. Please check out some of the resources that Ankur had talked about, as well as some of our other videos, including our Exchange management and high availability videos. Thanks for watching again.